The rain fell in relentless sheets along Elmwood Highway, a narrow, winding road that cut through dense pine forests and abandoned farmland. Streetlights flickered like dying stars, casting long shadows that danced across the slick asphalt. Most locals avoided the highway at night, but Sarah Thompson had no choice. A late assignment at the city newsroom had kept her at the office past midnight, and now, weary but alert, she navigated the curves with cautious precision. Her headlights caught movement ahead, a car stranded on the roadside, hazard lights flickering weakly through the downpour. She slowed, instinct prickling at the base of her neck. Stranded vehicles were not uncommon, but something about this one felt off. As she drew closer, she saw two figures arguing beside the vehicle. One man, middle-aged with a leather jacket plastered to his frame by rain, shook his fists violently. The other, younger, was pale and trembling, backing toward the car as if trying to make himself invisible. Words were lost in the roar of the storm, but the tension radiated through the air. Sarah's heart pounded. Her journalistic instinct screamed at her to stop, but fear warned her to keep moving. Then a shot rang out. It was sudden, deafening, and almost surreal against the patter of rain. The younger man crumpled to the asphalt, motionless. The older man, his attacker, vanished into the darkness like a phantom swallowed by night and rain. Sarah froze, her hands gripping the steering wheel, knuckles white. Every instinct screamed at her to call for help. She fumbled for her phone, her voice trembling as she reported the shooting to 911. Within minutes, the storm seemed louder, the highway lonelier. She was no longer just a witness, she was a participant in a crime that had shattered the quiet night. Other drivers slowed, some rubbernecking, others too scared to stop. A truck driver a mile ahead swerved, narrowly missing the scene, and later would tell police he saw the shooter, but maybe it was the victim fighting back, a confusing account that would add to the chaos. From a distance, a jogger noticed a shadowy figure slipping between trees, unsure if it was the killer or merely someone fleeing the storm. Detective Marcus Hall arrived within 20 minutes. He was a tall man with a weathered face and eyes that had seen more tragedies than he cared to count. The highway was now a crime scene, wet asphalt reflecting flashing police lights, the victim lying under a thin sheet of rain, and several witnesses clustered, still shaken. Hall's first glance at the victim, Paul Everett, a small-time businessman, told him this case would not be simple. Paul's hands were clenched, his eyes wide open in frozen terror, as if the last moments of his life had been burned into them. Hall noted the absence of physical struggle marks on the attacker's side, suggesting Paul hadn't seen it coming. But there were no shell casings nearby, only the faint lingering smell of gunpowder and rain mixing with oil from the road. Sarah spoke with Hall first. Her voice was tight, almost brittle from fear. I saw it all, but I don't know exactly. He just—" She trailed off, shaking. "Take your time," Hall said gently. "Every detail matters." Yet even as she recounted what she saw, her memory faltered under pressure. The storm had blurred the details, the flash of a gun, the glint of a tattoo, the attacker's face, everything seemed distorted. Other witnesses contradicted her statements. One claimed the shooter was taller, another insisted it was someone entirely different. Even the time of the shot varied by several minutes depending on whom Hall asked. Hall's frustration mounted. He had handled murder cases before, but never one where every eyewitness saw the same event, yet described it differently. "This isn't just a shooting," he muttered to himself. "It's a maze of perception, a crime wrapped in human error." The coroner arrived to remove the body, and the highway fell silent, save for the relentless rain. Traffic resumed slowly, drivers whispering about what they'd seen or thought they'd seen. Hall took a long look at the scene before heading back to his car. Something felt wrong. A crucial piece of evidence was missing. Sarah's dash cam, which she had been recording for her commute, was gone. Not misplaced, not damaged. Someone had taken it. The first chapter of the investigation was set. Hall knew the killer counted on witnesses seeing everything, yet leaving no clear trail. It was a meticulously planned crime, despite its seeming spontaneity. The storm, the shadows, and the witnesses' fragmented memories were all part of a perfect cover. As Hall drove back toward the station, he couldn't shake the image of Paul Everett's eyes, wide and frozen in fear. Each witness would carry their version of the night, and every version would conflict with another. The detective knew solving this case would not only test his skills, but also challenge the very idea of truth itself. Back at home, Sarah couldn't sleep. Her mind replayed the scene over and over, the rain, the gunshot, the man vanishing into darkness. She had glimpsed something critical, but fear and confusion clouded her memory. Somewhere in the storm, in the shadows of the highway, a killer had walked away, confident that justice would never catch up. And for the first time, Sarah realized sometimes, even when everyone saw everything, the truth could remain painfully elusive. The night closed in on Elmwood Highway, leaving behind shattered lives, terrified witnesses, and a mystery that had just begun to unfold. The rain had stopped, but Elmwood Highway remained a slick, sinister ribbon through the countryside. Detective Marcus Hall returned to the station where files, witness statements, and traffic camera footage awaited him. He pored over every detail with a meticulous eye. Each statement seemed honest yet contradictory, like fragments of a broken mirror. One witness insisted the shooter had a tattoo of a snake on his arm. Another swore the assailant had no visible markings at all. Sarah Thompson arrived at the station, carrying a notebook filled with sketches, observations, and recollections from her dashcam footage. "I can't remember everything," she admitted, her voice tight, "but I saw something, a reflection maybe. I can't be sure." Hall looked at her, nodding. "It's okay, Sarah. Even fragments can lead to the bigger picture." Outside the window, the town seemed unnervingly calm, almost normal. Yet underneath, fear and speculation simmered. News of the murder had spread quickly, and residents whispered about Paul Everett, the victim. At first glance, Paul appeared to be a harmless businessman, a man who ran a small auto repair shop on the outskirts of town. But the deeper Hall dug, the more he uncovered a life riddled with secrets, debts, and enemies. One lead came from a former business partner, James Collier, who admitted to harboring a grudge against Paul. "He ruined me," James said, voice shaking. "I lost everything because of him. But I didn't kill him. I wouldn't." His insistence rang with sincerity, but Hall noted the twitch in his eye, the subtle defensiveness in his tone. Then there was Robert Hayes, a local contractor who had been involved in a public dispute with Paul over a property deal. Neighbors remembered shouting matches outside the town hall. "I may have hated him, but I wasn't there that night. You have to believe me." Hall's notes were growing, a tangle of motives, half-truths, and alibis. Every person with a grudge suddenly became a potential suspect, and every witness seemed to see a different story. Sarah tried to help, piecing together snippets of dashcam video with her own observations, but even she began to doubt her memory. The rain, the darkness, the fleeting images, they blurred the lines between fact and perception. As the investigation deepened, Hall realized there was more at play than a simple argument gone wrong. The crime scene itself suggested planning. The shooter knew exactly how to create confusion, relying on the storm and the fragmented witness testimonies to mask his identity. And somehow, someone had removed Sarah's dashcam footage, the one piece of evidence that could have offered clarity. Then came the first real shock. A new witness emerged, a jogger named Lisa Morgan, who had been running late along the highway during the storm. She claimed she saw a man lingering in the trees near the median, watching the scene unfold. "I thought he was just a passerby, but he didn't run away like everyone else. He stayed, like he was waiting." Hall's mind raced. Could this be an accomplice? Or worse, the killer himself, observing the aftermath to ensure the crime remained unsolved? Meanwhile, the town's undercurrent of tension began surfacing in unpredictable ways. Rumors spread that some witnesses were lying to protect themselves or others. A local diner became the hub of whispered accusations. Residents speculated about hidden affairs, secret debts, and revenge plots. Everyone seemed to have a theory, and everyone pointed fingers at someone else. Hall knew that public suspicion often muddied investigations, but he also knew that somewhere in the chaos lay the truth. Sarah, meanwhile, began her own investigation, driven by a mix of fear and curiosity. She revisited the highway at night, retracing her path and checking places she had barely noticed during the storm. Faint impressions in the mud, subtle scuff marks on the roadside guardrail, even the way the light reflected off puddles, all of it became part of her analysis. She started jotting down every detail, no matter how minor, hoping it would form a picture that even Hall might have overlooked. But as Sarah dug deeper, danger loomed. A shadowy figure was seen near her apartment building one night, vanishing before she could identify them. Hall warned her to be cautious. "You've already witnessed too much," he said gravely. "Don't let curiosity get you hurt." Despite the danger, Sarah felt compelled to push forward. She interviewed witnesses again, asking questions no one else had considered. One older man mentioned seeing a dark sedan parked far from the scene, its lights off. Another woman spoke of a strange, muffled conversation in the distance that no one else had noticed. Small details, easily dismissed by the casual observer, began forming a network of clues. Meanwhile, Hall's investigation uncovered a pattern. Paul Everett's enemies were not random. Someone had orchestrated the timing of the murder to exploit these tensions. The killer had counted on witnesses being unreliable and on the storm to mask key evidence. Even the removal of Sarah's dashcam footage seemed intentional, a calculated step to ensure ambiguity. Just when Hall thought the case might finally gain traction, a new twist emerged. A witness, previously quiet and unassuming, came forward with startling information. He claimed to have seen the attacker's face clearly for a few seconds, enough to remember a small, distinctive tattoo on the neck. Hall's pulse quickened. This could be the break they had been waiting for, a clue that could finally link the perpetrator to the crime. Yet even this revelation was complicated. The witness's story didn't fully match other accounts, and conflicting timelines created uncertainty. Hall realized the investigation was now a delicate balance of cross-checking every memory, every statement, and every fragment of evidence. One misstep could send them down a false trail. The tension reached a boiling point when Hall received an anonymous call. A voice, low and distorted, whispered only, "You're looking in the wrong direction. Keep digging, but don't get too close." The line went dead before Hall could respond. That night, the highway seemed alive with unseen eyes. Sarah drove past the scene, flashbacks of the murder replaying in her mind. Every shadow, every flicker of light seemed to hint at danger. She realized that the killer had not just committed a crime, he had orchestrated a spectacle, exploiting fear, chaos, and human error. And somewhere in the dark, he was still watching. Part 2 ends with Hall reviewing all witness statements, dashcam fragments, and police reports, and realizing the investigation had only scratched the surface. The storm had passed, but the aftermath was just beginning. Every witness had secrets, every suspect had a motive, and the truth remained frustratingly elusive. The audience is left questioning, who can be trusted, and is justice even possible in a town where everyone saw everything, yet nothing is certain? The days after the storm passed, Elmwood Highway was quiet again, but a quiet that felt like a held breath. Detective Marcus Hall could feel it, a tension hanging over the town, as if the rain had washed away the streets, but not the fear. Hall had spent every waking hour reviewing witness statements, dash cam fragments, and traffic footage, but each lead seemed to spiral into contradiction. The witnesses had seen everything, yet nothing lined up. Sarah Thompson, meanwhile, had become a reluctant partner in the investigation. She pored over her recovered dash cam footage frame by frame, freezing moments of headlights, puddles, and fleeting reflections. At first, there was nothing, just shadows and rain. But then, in a single frame, she noticed it, a fleeting reflection in the side mirror of a car parked behind her. A man's face flashed for a second, his features blurred by rain and speed, but the distinctive tattoo on his neck caught her eye. She called Hall immediately. "I think I have something," she said, breathless. "A man, in my mirror. He was near the highway the night of the murder. Look closely. He has a tattoo. I can't tell much more, but it's a lead." Hall studied the footage. "Good work, Sarah. This might be the break we need. Keep it safe. Don't let anyone else see it." Armed with this clue, Hall revisited the crime scene under the cover of night. The highway was deserted, the wind rustling the pines like whispers. He examined the wet asphalt, noting subtle disturbances missed during the storm, tire marks that didn't match the victim's vehicle, scuff marks along the guardrail, and crushed cigarette butts, faint but present. A slight smell of gasoline lingered, unusual in an area without any nearby fuel source. Someone had returned after the crime, perhaps to stage evidence or eliminate traces. As Hall scoured the scene, Sarah walked beside him, clutching her notebook. "It's like he knew exactly what we would see," she said quietly. "Everything, every detail was designed to confuse." Hall nodded. This wasn't random. It was calculated. Back at the station, Hall cross-referenced Sarah's footage with witness statements. Slowly, patterns began to emerge. Witnesses' conflicting timelines now made sense when mapped against movement patterns, streetlight flickers, and vehicle positions. The jogger's account of a shadowy figure lurking near the median aligned with the truck driver's claim of a vehicle parked unusually far from the scene. Hall realized the killer had orchestrated a perfect illusion. He had relied on chaos, the storm, shadows, and human memory's natural fallibility. Even the witness's honesty could not save the investigation from confusion. Meanwhile, Sarah discovered something chilling. Reviewing a segment of her footage repeatedly, she noticed another subtle detail: a car following the shooter's escape route, maintaining a distance but matching his timing perfectly. Someone had been coordinating from a distance, ensuring the crime went unnoticed. Hall widened the investigation to include all vehicles recorded along the highway that night. It was painstaking work, tracing license plates, calling in traffic logs, and checking cell tower pings. And then came another twist. A vehicle that seemed unrelated at first, a dark sedan, was seen stopping near the highway minutes before and after the murder. Its driver was unknown, but multiple witnesses had glimpsed it. The detective felt the puzzle begin to form. This wasn't a simple murder of opportunity. It was premeditated, executed with precision, and designed to manipulate perception. Someone had relied on the witness's reliability against themselves. In the midst of this, the investigation took a dangerous turn. One witness, Lisa Morgan, the jogger, disappeared without a trace. Hall feared the worst: intimidation, abduction, or worse. The community began to panic. If witnesses could vanish, then who was safe? The town's sense of security crumbled, leaving only whispers and suspicion. Then Hall and Sarah found another breakthrough. Revisiting the dashcam footage, Sarah noticed a license plate reflected in a puddle, partially obscured by raindrops, but just enough to identify the vehicle. Hall traced it to a man with prior convictions for assault and fraud. A search of his records revealed a penchant for careful planning, patience, and the ability to manipulate situations to his advantage.
The detective confronted the suspect with the new evidence. The man claimed innocence, citing an alibi backed by shaky witness accounts. Hall knew this was expected. The killer had already counted on conflicting testimony and chaos to shield himself. Yet Hall remained undeterred. He had enough small pieces now: the tattoo, the dark sedan, the timing, the tire marks, the gasoline smell. These clues collectively painted a picture of a meticulous killer hiding behind a veil of chaos. Still, Hall faced another dilemma. Even with this evidence, prosecution would be tricky. Witnesses' memories were inconsistent, dash-cam footage was incomplete, and physical evidence had been compromised by the storm. Every step forward was fraught with uncertainty. Meanwhile, the killer watched from the shadows, confident that the storm's cover, the witness's unreliable memories, and his careful orchestration had kept him ahead. The detective and the journalist were closing in, but every lead risked exposure or misdirection. Hall felt the pressure mounting. Every moment he wondered if they were chasing truth or chasing a ghost. Part 3 ends on a tense note. Hall finally pieces together a possible timeline of the crime and the escape route, using Sarah's footage, witness statements, and forensic clues. He knows the killer has an accomplice or a backup plan still hidden. The audience is left on edge, asking, will Hall catch the perpetrator before they vanish again? Will the witness's flawed memories cost justice one more time? The shadows of Elmwood Highway are alive with secrets, and Hall realizes the investigation has become a psychological battle as much as a detective case. The storm may have passed, but the real danger is just beginning.
The days had turned into weeks, and Elmwood Highway had begun to feel like a scar on the town's collective memory. Detective Marcus Hall spent every moment analyzing the pieces of the puzzle that the storm, the witnesses, and the killer had left behind. Sarah Thompson continued her personal investigation, her dashcam footage and notebook now an indispensable resource. Every frame, every reflection, every fragment of evidence was scrutinized. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. Cross-referencing Sarah's dashcam reflections, the dark sedan's partial license plate, and the tattoo visible in the fleeting footage, Hall narrowed the suspect list to one man, Leonard "Lenny" Graves, a local with a history of violence and manipulation. Graves' alibi was solid on paper. He had been seen at a local bar during the murder, but the patterns of evidence suggested otherwise. Hall felt a gnawing certainty. Graves had orchestrated the murder to rely on witnesses' fallibility, counting on the storm and confusion to shield him. Sarah and Hall planned a late-night surveillance operation along the highway, hoping to draw Graves into a momentary slip. It was a tense vigil. Rain had returned and soft drizzle, making the highway shine like a slick ribbon of obsidian. Every passing car made their hearts jump. Hours passed with nothing until a familiar dark sedan appeared, moving slowly along the same route recorded on Sarah's dashcam months earlier. Hall signaled quietly, "That's him. Keep calm." The sedan parked near the median, and a figure emerged, tall, cautious, and seemingly aware of being observed. Hall and the surveillance team moved in quietly. Graves noticed them just in time, attempting to flee, but Hall anticipated it. Within moments, the suspect was apprehended. He struggled but offered no resistance beyond theatrics, a performance meant to maintain the illusion of control. At the station, Graves was interrogated. He claimed innocence, citing the bar alibi and insisting he had no motive. Hall pressed, systematically presenting the timeline, witness statements, dashcam reflections, tire marks, and the gasoline residue from the highway. The puzzle pieces, when laid together, pointed squarely at him. Yet Graves smirked, confident. He knew the investigation relied on imperfect human memory, on witnesses who had seen everything, yet remembered nothing consistently. "You think you've solved it, detective?" Graves sneered. "You have fragments, you have shadows, but the truth? That's gone, buried under lies, mistakes, and bad memories. I didn't need to run. I only needed them to forget what they saw. Hall felt a chill. Graves's confidence reflected a terrifying reality. Even if he confessed, the flawed memories and partial evidence could weaken the case, and that is exactly what the court would grapple with. The trial was a tense affair. Witnesses were brought in, each recounting their fragmented memories. Sarah's dashcam footage became a key exhibit, showing fleeting reflections of the suspect. Tire marks, scuff marks, and forensic evidence were meticulously presented, yet the defense focused on human error. Witnesses had seen conflicting versions, some details had been washed away by rain, and crucial pieces of evidence, like the initial dashcam, had been removed. The town watched, divided, as the legal battle unfolded. Despite Hall's thorough investigation, the jury was hesitant. How could anyone convict based on fragments and reflections? Yet the prosecution argued persuasively. The combination of circumstantial evidence, witness corroboration, and patterns of behavior were too precise to ignore. After days of testimony, the jury reached a verdict. Graves was found guilty of murder, but only on the basis of circumstantial evidence. The town breathed a collective sigh of relief, but not everyone felt justice had truly been served. Sarah published her exposé shortly afterward, a gripping account of the investigation and the limitations of eyewitness testimony. Sometimes, she wrote, we see everything, yet understand nothing. Memory is fragile, perception is flawed, and truth is elusive. Her story went viral, reigniting debates about human error, law, and justice in small towns. Hall visited the highway one last time. The rain had stopped, and dawn was breaking, casting pale light across the wet asphalt. He walked the stretch of road where the murder had occurred, noting small details that had been overlooked: the faint scuff marks on the guardrail, the mud where tires had skidded, the subtle slope of the road that had obscured visibility. These were the silent witnesses, standing where human eyes had faltered. Even with the conviction, Hall felt a lingering unease. Graves was behind bars, but the sense of complete justice remained out of reach. The killer had relied on chaos and human fallibility, and though Hall had pieced together the truth, it had been a narrow victory. Every witness had seen everything, yet fragments had survived, the rest lost to fear, rain, and confusion. Sarah joined him on the highway, notebook in hand. "Do you think it's over?" she asked softly. Hall shook his head. "Legally, yes, but truth? Truth is bigger than a verdict, and sometimes it doesn't fit neatly into the law." They stood in silence, listening to the wind rustle through the pines, the distant hum of early traffic, and the echoes of a night that had changed the town forever. Elmwood Highway remained a scar, a reminder that even when justice is pursued, it is often imperfect, fragile, and incomplete. As they drove away, Sarah glanced in the rearview mirror. For a moment, she thought she saw a shadow lingering near the median, a fleeting movement, almost as if the highway itself was alive with secrets. She blinked, and it was gone. The murder had been solved, the killer captured, and the case officially closed. But the story, the memory of that stormy night, and the lessons of perception, chaos, and human error lingered. Justice had been served in form, but the truth, she realized, was always more complicated, always more elusive. And so, Elmwood Highway returned to its quiet, sinister routine, a road that bore witness to a crime, yet reminded all who traveled it that some shadows never fully disappear, and some truths remain just out of reach.